Clerk, CFO.
Leanne Evans, School District Treasurer.
Approval to allow virtual participation. Do we have anybody virtual? I guess we
Okay.
do. TFM is there virtual. Anybody else?
Hang on just a second.
We need to say.
Okay,
I need an approval.
it's coming from this way.
Approve.
It's muted, that's muted. We had the same problem last time.
Virtual people.
Check on.
No, I have to go in.
Approval. Agenda? Any comments on the agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the minutes of April 23.
Have the minutes?
I think we do. Very short.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. So public comments, we have very many people to the public, unless you're on the line.
There's a lot of people online right
There are, okay. Are there any public comments? We'll go to the next one. Proposed 2021 tax anticipation note. Leon, or I guess David Moore on the
And
line?
it's good, he is, but I'm going to cover the tan. Give me just a second, he's working on the mic. Well, I can go ahead, I can go ahead and talk through the tan. The presentation just isn't up on the screen, but you have it in front of you. Is it right? Okay, does the sound work okay now? Okay, that seems to be working. So, let's see, how do we get the tan up here? Okay, you have the tan in front of you, and it's on the screen, although it's very small. It's easier to see on the television screen. Yeah. Oh, that's better. Okay. So the tax anticipation note, this is like your favorite rerun. You see this every year. The presentation looks identical to what you've seen in prior years. I've just changed the dates. The tax anticipation note is a short-term note that we use to address short-term cash flows. Simply put, our year starts in July, and our tax revenues come in November and most of it in December, so the general fund runs short of cash. So we borrow money, and then we pay it off every year. And this graph kind of shows the shortfall, the projected shortfall, and we're still working on the cash flow projections. I'm not sure if that number, where it shows how low we'll get, I think it may be more than that. There's a lot of questions regarding what we're paying with the CARES Act and paying directly through general fund and what's being reimbursed. So we're continuing to work on that. But the plan right now is to get approval from you to do a COPS issue not to exceed, a TANs issue not to exceed 115 million, just like in the past. I do have the chart that I bring up every year that shows historically the last 10 years of data. And so for last year, we borrowed in October. We priced it in September, closed in October, and we paid it off at the end of January, which is what we're planning to do this year because the interest rates are just so low. We're expecting the rate to be less than it was last year, so less than 0.16, maybe 0.09, maybe 0.12. It's going to be a really low interest rate, and we'll add in the cost of issuance. And every year the cost looks to be higher than it actually turns out to be. These are maximum numbers that we have for the cost of issuance. Total cost, net cost for this, including interest earnings, which will be, we're projecting something pretty pathetic. It may be more than that. Would be $140,000. Last year it ended up, a very similar deal ended up at a cost of $57,000. I had an interesting discussion with staff in my office yesterday talking about why we do this. And it's really, I look at it as an insurance policy. Well, general fund runs short of cash. We do have cash in other funds. But if there's anything wrong with our projections or something changes in the world, and this was brought home to me last year, there are school districts in the state of Florida that didn't get their property taxes in November and December. The large hotels decided not to pay early and paid much later, and they had a significant cash flow issue. So having this in place is like cheapest insurance policy ever to make sure we can cover payroll.
Wasn't there a deferral also of payment dates for taxes?
There was.
So that you had that as part of
Right.
it.
I'm not expecting that to happen next year, but it reminded me how important it is to have this transaction there. It's a very low cost. In many years, we make money on it. It just depends on what the interest rates are and the spread between the borrowing rate and the investment rate. But I know that if I ask my boss, you know, is $57,000 okay to make sure we cover payroll for a month? The answer is yes. I don't even have to look that way. My most important thing in my job is to make sure there's no problem with payroll. And this is what it's for.
Well, it's the whole kit and caboodle. If you don't pay the people, are they
It
going to
is.
show up?
It is. We also did the analysis, as we've done in the last 2 years, looking at the cost associated with letting it mature in August, which is what we normally do, so we can pick up some extra interest earnings. But interest rates are so low, it's just not worth it. And so we're sticking with the maturing towards the end of January, whether it's the 29th or the 30th. We'll figure that out as we get a little closer to borrowing. But as I said, this is really like a rerun. The plan is to do this on September 21st of 2021, sorry. I changed the day of the month and not the day of the year. It'll be September 1st, 2021. Obviously, I've used the same slides and same presentation. This really is the only time we give you something that you see the same thing every single year, because we do the exact same thing every year.
Nevertheless, it's interesting each year to see that you cover your deficit with this tax anticipation note, which as you say, you can make money and you don't even have to pay it back if you do make money.
Right. And we've had years. Even look at 2019, 2020, we made $700,000 that year. So when interest rates go back to a normal environment, you have positive arbitrage, and we do get to keep it.
So actually make money by borrowing the money during that period. You don't have to pay it back to the IRS.
So are there any questions on the TAN? This is one of 2 items that I do need to vote on today.
All right, is there a motion to approve the tax anticipation note? Mike, is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much.
So we've got then the proposed refunding of the 2012.
Right, and
Is this
I'm
the
gonna-
this one we discussed earlier?
It is, and I wanted to start this one off, and then I'm going to turn it over to Laura Howe, who is going to be talking about it. But at the last meeting, that was April 23rd, we had not yet put the bid out to get the quotes and the ideas from the investment bankers and the banks yet. And you all rightly said, we need more information, and I want to commend the committee. You always make sure that we're doing it the right way and asking questions, and I really do appreciate that. And what you're going to see as we went into this, the results of what we got, we were talking about doing a Cinderella deal, and that was not the recommendation at the end of the day. It ended up being a pretty complicated process to decide what to do, though. And so I'm going to ask you a favor, when we're going through this, don't flip through the pages, because you'll see the end in advance, and I want you to go through the slides, because you'll do what I did. There's one page where you see all 3 results, and you immediately look to one, and that's not the right one, in my opinion. So I don't want you to go through, I want you to watch it on the screen. We broke it into a segment on each slide.
No surprises, huh?
I spent a lot of time with Laura and David and Robert from PFM walking through this, and it was a lot more complicated than we thought. So again, thank you all for making sure that we're providing all the data you need, and that helps us be more prepared as well. So Laura, can we hear you? Can you talk?
I'm here. Can you hear me? Good morning.
Yes, we can hear you perfectly. Can y'all hear us? I haven't asked anybody yet. Does it sound okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Okay.
We can see you, David. We can't, can we see Laura?
Laura's up in the top left
left?
hand, left hand.
Okay.
She's the top one on the left.
Okay, good.
There. Okay.
Good morning.
And I'll move the slides for you. If I need to move faster or anything, just chime in and let me know.
Okay. I'm getting a little echo. Are you guys?
We're okay.
We're okay.
Okay, perfect. So as Leanne had said, David had walked through back on the April 23rd Finance Committee, potential different options of what, if after sitting out this RFP, the district may receive, since the call date for the 2012 Cs is not until next year. So I know David had talked about potential of a forward, doing a taxable or a Cinderella deal might be some of the proposals that we received. So we did distribute the RFP on April 26th and received proposals from 12 different firms. And in the summary table below, you'll see every firm provided some sort of a forward, either public or private. Several, there you go.
Just thought I'd make it a little
Scroll down
bigger.
yeah, a little more. Several provided taxable either through public or private as well. And then you'll see we have other over here. And there's notes describing exactly what the other is. So for Bank of America, they did a multi-tranche forward refunding, combining both the 2012 and 2014 Cs. And one thing I want to make sure to note is when we did send out this RFP, we did ask for specifically the 2012 Cs COPS, but then any other potential refinancing opportunities for the district as well, if the banks wanted to look into that. So Bank of America had done both the 2012 Cs and 2014 Cs. JP Morgan had provided Cinderella for the 2012 Cs. Morgan Stanley did the 2012 Cs and then also offered a forward direct purchase for the 2015 B, Cs, and Ds. PNC did a Cinderella for the 2012 Cs, and then Raymond James, in addition to what they offered for the 2012 Cs, did look at the potential refunding of the 2014 Cs and the 2015 Cs, Bs, Cs, and Ds.
Laura, can you break for just a second and explain to everybody, 'cause I think we all mostly know, but maybe not clearly. When you're talking about a forward, that's really a delayed delivery, right, where you price it?
Correct.
And don't
yes.
receive
and
the bonds for some months later at that
Correct.
same very
And we
price,
do
so
have
long
a-
as conditions are
sorry.
met. So
Sorry.
that's the forward. And then the other item you had was the crossover or Cinderella bonds. And again, that's a little different. That you do a taxable bond first, and then it converts, as Paul can,
Right.
Bob has had to, because it's always authority in the
Okay.
process.
Well, and I think what we can do is start walking through what I mean, this is telling you what we got, but let's get into the weeds of what it actually looks like, because I think that's going to help.
So we took of the proposals received to kind of give you guys an overview of what specifically for each of the different options. So the forward delivery, we took the best, most attractive between terms and conditions that were being provided. And we did look at direct placements and public offerings for each of these. So that's why we want to make sure it was an encompassing overview of the proposals received. So for the forward delivery, Regions provided a direct placement on the 2012 Cs that was estimating a net present value savings of 14.76%. Citi provided one of the most in their analysis for a public offering that was attractive at 13.75%. And then Bank of America provided a multi-tranche refunding with an estimated savings doing the 2012 Cs and 2014 Cs for a total of 13.7%. PNC did provide the Cinderella refunding, and as you'll see, the savings on that was not as attractive as the bids received for a forward. And then for the taxable, again, Citi had provided a proposal for the 2012 Cs as a taxable refunding, as well as Regions had provided that as well. And the economics there, again, were not as attractive as the forward. So what we're going to get into on the next slides, and Leanne will walk through this, is we're really kind of honing in on the forward delivery and the potentials that we have there for the district. Any questions before we move into this?
I think we're all good, Laura.
Okay. So I do want to note, and it's, I think, at the bottom of this page,
Bottom of each of the pages.
all of the net present value savings on the 2014 Cs when we were doing our analysis are PV back to September 15th of 2020. So that will, when we're looking at the 2014 C specifically, it's comparing apples to apples in that, because some of the analysis, the dated date of when you would potentially close is different. So we do want to note this when you're looking at this. Some of the numbers are different than what was on the previous slide of what the banks proposed in their analysis. When we ran it, we kind of changed some of that so that we had a equal comparison.
Right, and when the banks, when they put their bids in, they don't lock in a guaranteed savings. What they do is give us a spread to an index. So PFM can go through and assume one rate and then apply the spreads to each one to be able to give us an apples to apples comparison. Go ahead, Laura.
Okay, and you'll notice on the slides moving forward, I want to make sure the highlighted yellow is what is being proposed up there, and you'll see on some later slides a light blue, and those are hypotheticals. So what we have from Bank of America for forward delivery, if we do both the 2012 Cs and 2014 Cs as a multi-tranche, it would produce an aggregate net present value savings of a little over $10 million. The rates on this, their rate on standing alone on the 2012 Cs was not as attractive as what Regions has proposed. The 2014 Cs probably wouldn't get through their credit approval since it wouldn't close until 2024. So what they're proposing here for the rate is assuming that you guys are doing both and they're combined together. So we wouldn't recommend doing just one or the other with Bank of America, and that wasn't an option. So we'll go to the next slide.
Laura, let me clarify,
Yeah.
be real clear. The B of A proposal is, from their perspective, one deal. And they do it that way because the average life and the forward periods and all the things that are built in the deal work. And that's the only way they can do the 2014 financing. And so it is one package.
And part of that provides a more attractive rate. And this is really what it's leading into is so when looking at this, because it is a package deal, the rate being provided on the 2014 Cs is more attractive than if we were to try and go and bid that out as a forward today. So looking at this, we wanted to go through and take in the considerations because a 2024 call is a ways out. A lot of variables can go into this. We do know that the current transportation infrastructure bill does provide for advanced refundings to be reinstated, but it is unknown when and if Congress will pass that bill. So there's an unknown of when advanced refundings and the 2014 Cs would be eligible for an advanced refunding if it was reinstated. So we looked at the hypothetical, and again, I want to remind you that for the 2014 Cs, everything's being, the present value is being put back to September 15th of this year, and the information in yellow is what is known that's on the table in proposals, and the information in blue is hypothetical. So we took the multi-tranche proposal from Bank of America that we just walked through and compared that to if we went and executed the forward delivery with Regions Bank for the 2012 Cs that was producing 14.76 net present value percent, and assume that we could do an advance refunding in September of this year. And that's where we're getting that date that we're putting everything back to that date to make sure it's comparable. And if we were able to do an advance refunding in September of this year at current market rates, it would produce 16.25% net present value savings. So you do see that the aggregate savings, if we moved forward with Regions and did an advance refunding this fall, would be higher than what's currently on the table with Bank of America. However, saying that, we do not know when and if the advance refundings will be reinstated. And also, when we looked at this in the analysis, the total aggregate savings, and we want to hone in on that, before the market MMD could increase only 43 basis points before you would be back down to the 10 million that's on the table today between now and September.
And
So I'll pause if-
we've had bumps of more than 43 basis points in the last 6 months, so it's not unlikely that we could see rates shift that much between
Yeah,
now and September.
Yeah,
So we got a lot of ifs in this
we sure do,
scenario.
including whether Congress would act on an advance refunding. That's a big if.
Yeah. Well, I asked them to go through, and there's actually one more scenario. I wanted to go through all the options so that you all could see the analysis of what we went through before we made a decision. Okay, next slide, Laura.
Sure, unless there's any questions on this.
So this is why I didn't want you to flip through, because this is the
So
slide.
the advance refunding thing is our assumption, right?
Yes.
It's not what was proposed.
No, the blue, anything blue
Anything
means
blue
that
is-
we've worked up scenarios of
Right.
what it might be.
Right, what might otherwise be if things changed.
Right.
Right.
Okay,
So we walked through the first two, the multi-tranche proposal being presented by Bank of America. If we did the regions forward for just the 2012 Cs and a potential advance refunding in this fall. And then we wanted to look at if we executed the regions proposal now for the 2012 Cs as a forward, and then waited for current refunding for the 2014 Cs, since advance refundings are unknown, if that's going to be an option. And you'll see if the market.
The current
Pardon?
refunding would be in 2024, right?
Right. So yes. So what I was going to say is that if we assume that the current market rates remain the same in order to do this in the spring of 2024, so 3 years from now, the savings would be higher from, going from 15.93% to 18.93%. So we did look at that and did the same analysis as had we did done in the advance refunding. And between now and 2024, if the market increases over 76 basis points, you'll be below the savings that's on the table today with the Bank of America multi-tranche proposal. So I'll pause and see if there's any questions with all of the information being presented.
well, I guess I have the question is how, you're talking 3 years from now. And,
The recommendation, that I'm going to lead the next slide,
Right.
is to go with the Bank of America proposal. I wanted to go through the scenarios because we're turning down a possible 12 million to take 10. So I wanted to make sure we walked through that, and it was very clear. But the 10 million, that's what's on the table that's been proposed that we can lock in. The other scenarios have all those ifs. If advance refundings are approved and if interest rates don't change. We've worked with this committee on a lot of transactions, and I have this little toy crystal ball on my desk to remind me that we have no idea what's going to happen.
3 years out, you're talking.
Exactly. So the recommendation is to move forward with the Bank of America proposal and take advantage of it. And one of the conversations I had with Laura and David is, we're going back and forth on all these scenarios, and every one of them had anywhere from 12 to 15% present value savings. It's a good problem to have if refunding available, where we could make that much in savings. So, but we wanted to make sure we went through all the analysis so that we could explain why we got to one recommendation. And I really would like to open it up for the committee. I mean, Laura, I know I cut you off, but was there anything else that we needed to do before we open it up to the committee members?
I did just want to remind, if you'll flip to the next page as well. And I think it sounds like most are aware of this, but how the process would work if we moved forward with this, we would go ahead and set up the structure on everything. And it would be 2 series, since there's different closing dates, but all done at the same time. So there is some sort of economy of scales there for a 2022A and a 2024A. So we would go ahead and bring that to the board, go ahead and lock in rates today. And then you'll see that it's not going to close until May of 2022 to redeem in August of 2022, the 2012 Cs, and then May of 2024 to redeem the 2014 Cs in August of 2024. So I just wanted to make sure that the committee was aware that there is a lag there. I know that, we had talked about with a delay in the actual delivery of the bonds, making sure that you were aware, if the district was dropping below investment grade, there would be an issue with the closing. There are different terms and conditions you would have to make sure you meet. But we did look at that, and we talked with Bob Gang, as bond counsel to make sure he was comfortable as well with what was being proposed, and he was.
And the terms and conditions that they've recommended on the B of A transaction mimic another private placement we have in place with B of A that matures in 2022. So they keep the terms and conditions the exact same as what on deals we already have, which was also, I like the way they did that. The only real worry is making sure our ratings don't go down. If our ratings drop significantly, that could impact, that would be the big risk for us.
And there would be a lot more issues going on if you're dropping below investment grade.
So that's really the condition, or anything else that's material that happens to the school district, basically.
The other thing that is a little different with this, there are cost of issuance associated with it, and we usually pay that from the bond proceeds. We'll be paying part of the cost of issuance when we do our pre-closing in July, but we won't have the proceeds until 2022 and 2024. So we'd have to build that into the budget to make sure we had money available, and it's in FY22. So we could build that into the budget that we're developing right now. Any questions or thoughts?
Well, I guess a couple comments, and I'd like to hear Paul on this. Bank of America has been very creative in the way they've approached this before, and I think they're the ones that did the crossover refunding that the Solid Waste Authority did. I'll take the mask off. What I was saying is Bank
Take
of
your mask off
America's.
when you speak, and I'd also say, talk into the microphone, otherwise the people on the call can't hear you.
Okay,
Well, sorry,
Thanks.
I can't hear.
I get
Okay.
it, Bill.
It's my own,
No,
No
I think it's,
problem.
I think you
Old
get
age,
blurred
but,
on these things.
I can't understand you with the.
Right. Okay. I'm happy to take it off. So what I was saying was Bank of America has been very creative, I think, in this case and other cases with the district, and in the case, I think, of the Solid Waste Authority, where Paul did a very substantial deal with them.
Yes, and we had great savings and all with them.
It was like
Yeah.
$35 million, if my recollection is right.
So, but this is good. I think you lock it in now and
Okay.
go forward.
Yeah, one of the things that I liked about this process, it opens it up for our members of our underwriting team, and B of A is one of the members of the underwriting team, but we also had other banks outside the team could bid on this, so it gives them a chance to show what they can do. So we looked at all of them, and the Bank of America proposal's the one that's been recommended by PFM, and I agree with it after spending a lot of time going through it with them. And just like we did today, walking through why we're selecting one versus another, and I think it makes sense. So we've also got some slides in here with interest rate charts. I don't know that we need to go through that. It was just in case you had questions to see, we are expecting rates to start to rise. That's
It'd be
another-
interesting to see, wouldn't it? To see the charts on expected interest rates?
It
what
just
they're looking like.
shows, this is what the rates are looking like and how they've changed. So we do have a rising yield curve, so rates are expected to go up, especially, the longer-term rates are already rising.
So those were factored in somewhat,
Yes.
presumably,
Yeah.
already by the investment bankers,
Right.
right? And still we got
This
a very
economist, I forget who, said that there's two kinds of experts with regard to predicting interest rates. One group says we don't know what interest rates are going to do. The other group says we don't know that we don't know what interest rates are going to do. So these
Right.
alternate methods, with all these speculations about future interest rates, even if I think they're
Right. Well, and
too
that,
speculative for me. Let's just leave it at that.
well, that's exactly why we ended up going with the recommendation. We don't know what rates are going to do. We don't know if advance refundings are going to be an option. We certainly don't know what the rates are going to be in 2024. So you take the recommendation that gives us the most savings net, and gets the transaction done. Okay,
Anything further?
that's all on this one. As I said, it was a little more complicated than we expected it would to be, and
So you're looking for our approval?
we do need your approval
Is
to
there a
move
motion?
forward.
So moved.
Second?
Paul? Bill? Second, okay.
We're voting on which alternative?
On the Bank of America alternative for the, I guess it's
Right
about
there.
13.5%
Less savings, but
Right.
more certain.
Put that on the screen, the one we're voting on.
The front one, that one on
I can
top.
go to the one where it's just
Right
showing
there,
this one.
that one,
it.
okay,
Yep.
thank you. Aye.
Okay, well, all, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So, yeah, Bill is going to be quoted again on that, or we're going to ask for that quote again on interest rates as time goes on.
I gotta get it right, I didn't have it quite right. I think it was John Kenneth Galbraith.
Was it Galbraith? Wow.
Any others of you know more about it than I do? That's unusual.
Well, that's the way that quote goes. Anybody know more than I do, right? That's what you're all about, on interest rates. Okay,
Okay, so we're going to move on into the discussion part of the meeting, and there's two items, and I think Laura's going to talk on this one too. This is just about the new money comps that we completed. We did the taxable and tax exempt. We did get that done, and Laura, you're up again.
So yeah, the interest rates have remained pretty stable over the past year. They've slightly increased. One thing I want to note when we're honing in on this is around the 10-year, and I'm hovering over it like you can see where my mouse is. That last year, a year ago, was slightly lower. It's increased a little bit since then, and in relation to the transaction we just did. I just want to make sure you're aware of that on there. But rates are still incredibly attractive. If you go to the next slide, Leanne, and this factors into it as well. And Leanne and David and Robert and I had a lot of discussion about this when we were doing the analysis for the forwards of where rates have been in credit spreads. And credit spreads have tightened some from the time we did the deal last year. So while rates have risen slightly in the 10-year period compared to last year, credit spreads have tightened. So if we'll go into the transaction, so we were able to successfully price both the 2021A and 2021B certificates. Sold a negotiated sale with JP Morgan as a senior underwriter on May 5th and closed on May 20th. And what I was pointing to with this, with the credit spreads in the market for the 2021As with a final maturity going out to 2024 for $101,950,000 that we did as tax exempt, the all-in true interest cost was 2.67%, which is an awesome result. Last year, when we went out with the 2020As that matured in 2034, the all-in true interest cost was 2.86%. So even though rates had risen slightly, the spreads had tightened that much that we're able to produce an awesome result for the district. And we did have the small taxable piece that we issued as a 2021B certificates for $9.9 million that matures in 2035 with a true interest cost of 2.65%. So a really great result for the district. I think the next slide, yes, shows the aggregate debt service of how we had structured this. So the orange bar that you see in 2035 is a taxable, so we made sure to have that mature early on. And then the blue is where we had structured the rest of the principal for the tax exempt portion of this transaction. So this allows in the areas prior to 2035, that's just the interest payment. So we did structure it so all principal started in 2035 to 2034, allowing plenty of capacity for the district moving forward and taking advantage of how low interest rates are currently along the curve. And you'll see that the 50% of the 1.5 mils, the district is still well under it and anticipating property taxes to continue to grow. There should still be additional capacity moving forward for the rest of the capital plan.
Yeah, this transaction provided funding for the new high school that we're building. There was an article in the paper about that recently. We just did groundbreaking. And there's also an elementary school that we're starting up that's in Boca Raton next to the Don Estridge
where's
Middle
the high
School.
school?
The high school is near, just south of Lake Worth Road off of Lyons. It's next to Woodlands Middle School. So it's going to be, it will house over 2,500 students. I saw the
Is it a new
pictures of
Lake
it.
Worth High School, basically?
It's Westlake, we're calling it
Okay.
Greater Area Westlake Worth
Mhm.
High School. The name hasn't been selected yet. Usually,
Mhm.
once the principals have been named, they bring in some students and parents in the area, and they work together to come up with a name and the colors and the mascot, so all that's still to come. We haven't opened a brand-new high school in quite a while, so there's a lot of work to do when we get ready to open one. If you haven't seen pictures, I can send you a link. There was a presentation done to the board just recently that had drawings and of what they're going to look like. It was a nice video, so I can send you a link to that after the meeting. But it was for the high school and the middle school, high school and the elementary school. And the taxable transaction is funding the work done at Delray Full Service. That's going to be adult ed and a lot of community access. So we were a little nervous about having it done as tax exempt because of private use regulations. But the rates for taxable is so low and close to tax exempt. If we were ever going to do a taxable deal, this is the time to do it. So it worked out really
They were
well.
right on top of the tax exempt deal. Isn't this amazing when you look at this?
Yeah, I was the rate on the taxable deal is actually less than
Less
the
than the
tax
tax
exempt.
exempt deal. It's a
but
couple years younger. I mean,
It's
it has-
5 years younger, right?
But it sure is neat to be able to do that.
We have one other school that we'll be looking at when we do the 2022 transactions.
Yeah.
This was Delray Full Service, and the other one is Roosevelt Full Service, that will be used in a similar way, and I hope to do that as taxable as well. So we'll do something similar to this next year.
Very well done.
So I think,
I have a question for Mike. I mean, obviously, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but I mean, like George and I were at a presentation yesterday at BDP. I mean, population explosion in Palm Beach County is real, and it's much younger. It's much younger than it has been historically in terms of the age of the people who more likely will have children of school age K through 12. So have you guys been getting inquiries? I mean, that is unprecedented, or you have no idea what's going on?
I don't have a real good idea. We're welcoming all inquiries, and we're ramping up our efforts to register students this summer in the outreach, because this year we're down 6,000 students, and so we're trying to recover that in the fall. We know that we're going to have the largest kindergarten class probably ever, because what we saw last school year was a lot of families elected to delay their kids' entry into school. So we're expecting to see a bump in the kindergarten students. And then, I'm hopeful that we will start seeing more and more registrations, but it's kind of too early to tell. And a lot of that registration process will probably be leading up right till when we start school, August 10th. But we welcome the new families. That would be great if we could kind of start bouncing back and get back into a growth mode on enrollment.
Where is the growth coming from? Northeast? Is it coming from New York and New England?
Well, it's it's the investment firms, for the most part,
Yeah,
bringing
bringing their high-income,
high-income people.
Companies,
And I'm
basically.
sure the balance of the kids are going to get split between private, charter, and public. And I know that's what you can't anticipate is what that allocation will be. But there's not enough private schools to absorb what's coming, so there's
What was interesting,
for good options of education.
yeah, we'll keep following that. I mean, this year there's a lot of publicity around kids missing statewide. In the state, there's about 2.8 million kids in the entire system. There's about 88,000 kids that we thought we were down statewide. And in the final analysis, now that we're almost finished with the school year, 60,000 of those kids turned up in virtual ed, and then home education. So virtual ed was the big winner. There's a Florida virtual school, and then there's charter schools. You may see TV commercials for K-12 charter school that's virtual, and they picked up like 10,000.
do they do okay in the virtual schools? Are they accomplishments?
No, I mean, the research really shows that the students do best in the classroom, and that's what we're really promoting, that kind of a return to as close to normal as we can get and get students back in the classroom. There's a lot, we did see, there's a lot of concern about the learning loss, that some kids have, that's fallen behind. And, we've had some disparities, in terms of achievement, and those gaps may have widened. So that was a lot of the impetus for the federal stimulus money, So we are putting additional resources in place right now for next school year, so that when the kids do come back, that we can address both their academic and social emotional needs.
Thank you.
Okay, I will send that video out. It's very short, but it does show the pictures of what we're building, and I think that's helpful. If those of you that are on the Sales Tax Oversight Committee, you get to see a lot of videos, but the rest of you don't, so I'll make sure I send that out today. I think that's all of this one.
The internal audit risk? Ben?
Yeah, I want to get that started, and I'm going to turn it over very quickly. This committee's never had an opportunity to meet our Inspector General. So we have, years ago, we went from an internal audit function to an Inspector General. And Teresa Michael is our new Inspector General. I want to make sure before she gets started that you all know, anytime you're dealing with investment in debt, it's considered a high risk when you look at audits. And we are audited every year by external audit firms. Every 3 years, the Florida Auditor General audits. We could be audited all day. We've got everything documented. We have to. It's cash and it's moving money. So we get audited regularly. But Ms. Michaels is here to talk about what the Office of Inspector General does and to get some feedback from you. So I'm going to turn this over to her and let her introduce herself.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you all taking the time to speak with me today. As I said, my name's Teresa Michael. I'm the new Inspector General. Prior to this, I was the Inspector General over at DFS. So we did have investments. We had Treasury there. I am familiar with it, although I'm not an auditor. I am an investigator as my background. But one of the things that we do in the IG's office is we do our audit plan, and we do both a short-range and a long-range audit plan. And previously, the audit plan was based on an informal risk assessment. I believe, especially with me being new, and with the size of the agency, that a formal risk assessment is better and the best practices. One of the things that I am doing is I'm going to be interviewing all of executive management, the individual school board members, and I also wanted to get some input from the different advisory committees. And this has nothing to do at all with the finance committee or the finance office, but I wanted to get your insight and your professional expertise. If there's anything that you see, it could be reading something in the newspaper. It could be something that you've seen in your career that you think might be a concern, or something that we haven't looked at in my office. And it may have nothing to do at all with finance. We work very closely with finance. They are audited. The Auditor General's here all the time. And that's not the concern, and we work very closely with them. And that's one of the things that does alleviate a lot of my risk. I don't feel as concerned about investments and that area. But you all see things from a different view, a different lens from sitting outside. So you might see things that we're not seeing that could be a risk, or something that my office isn't covering, or that we could do better. And I know some of the things that you may not want to discuss in an open public forum, because we don't want to point where the holes are to the bad guys. So I've given each one of you my business cards, and you can reach out to me individually. But we're also here available to the committee and to all the members as a resource. If there's an area that we can help, we do process improvement, we do consulting, and of course we do the investigations, which is the negative side of our office. But I just want to see if there's anything that you think we have not covered, or if you have any concerns, please let me know. I'm looking for input as to what we should look at for both our short and long-term audit plan. So if there's anything that you think that we need to address or that we haven't covered sufficiently, I'd
Where do
appreciate
we find your report so that we can look at that?
They're on the website under publications and reports. All the audit reports are there. We do also an annual report as well. We also have an audit committee that meets,
Yes.
I'd say every 2 months or so. And that's all televised, and that's also on the web.
Okay, I do have a question, and it kind of is a follow-up on the questions we've had before. On the sales tax, I guess it was the sales tax that was questioned for charter schools, and where the charter schools were going to take a cut of monies already received by.
It's the 1 mil for
district.
operations.
It's 1 mil for operations.
Right. And that is something I believe
Yes, it
that
wasn't
is
sales
still
tax, it was
going
general
through,
tax,
that it's been appealed. It's
Right.
under appeal right now.
Right.
Right.
But we are tracking, we do track the sales. We do have a unit that handles just contract oversight, RFPs, and also does the sales tax.
I
and
guess
we are
this was
doing an
actually
audit.
more than sales tax. This was the general tax, wasn't it?
Yeah, this
Yes.
is, this is
Property
The
tax.
mill, the
General
property
property
tax.
tax, yes.
So that, the risk assessment there, how is your risk taken there where there may be money that has to be paid back by the school district to cover charter schools who
That-
were
that-
not funded from the original monies that came
Right.
out?
That is a definite risk, and that is something that we are going to have to take into account, and we'll work with Mike and the office, as well as the general counsel's office, to see how we can reduce that risk.
Yeah, it seems fundamental, that one.
Yeah, just a little more on that. So that lawsuit, we prevailed in the lower court. We prevailed at the Fourth Court of District Appeal. We won the original. Then that same court reversed themselves after doing an en banc review. I think it was a 7-4 vote. We're continuing to appeal that to the Supreme Court. But in the interim, we've been advised that we should, on a go-forward basis, put the potential charter school money share aside. So that means with the budget we're building right now for next year, I have to earmark about $25 million for in case the charter schools ultimately win. And then what's not clear is that, we're about halfway through that referendum. If we have to go back retroactive 2
The
years,
question is retroactive, whether you have to not just pay them
Retroactive,
going forward, but
that's the
going back.
$45 million question.
Uh-huh.
So that's something that we are working into our budget planning and that we continue to fight.
That's ferocious. Is there any way to deal with it?
It's very upsetting, right? Because we really believe we were on solid legal ground. We had a legal opinion. We went to Greenberg and Trog. The law has since changed. When we passed the referendum in 2018, the law did change that now, going forward, future referendums, you must include charter schools. And even that change in the law kind of speaks to our case, that if they had to be included all along, then why did you find it necessary to change the law?
Yes, right.
But, so we're hoping that the judges will follow the law on this and not the politics. But the politics are going the other direction. And that's what's hurt us.
Well, the
I think.
politics were quite big when one judge is able to reconvene the entire court and reverse the ruling. This was the appellate court.
And the same judge that did that ultimately had to step aside and recuse himself from the case. So,
because of conflicts.
Well, thank you very much. Again, at any time, we are a resource to the committee and to any of the members. If you have any concerns or something that you read in the newspaper, you have a question, a report that we produce, I'm more than willing at any time to speak, and we can help in any way, we will. But Mike and Leanne are great to work with, so it's not one of the areas that we really stay up at night worrying about.
Yeah, we actually work very closely with the IG's office. I think I've mentioned before, when we did the banking contract a few years ago, we were able to consolidate so that the school internal accounts are all at one bank. We now have online access and have granted the IG's staff online access. They also have, when we changed the accounting software for the schools, they now have access directly into the accounting system. So it makes it much easier for them to do audits and to see data. We monitor the school's activity. If we see something that looks odd, we pick up the phone and call the IG's office and let them know what we're seeing.
Leanne, I mean, most of the risk regarding the schools, I mean, you kind of reeled that in when you took over all the clubs and everything else, because I mean, in everything that's been known about over the last decade, and there was several,
Right.
was all, on parents having access to various account money.
I think the district has done a really good job at being proactive and trying to find all the loopholes. But at the end of the day, if somebody wants to steal or commit fraud, they're going to find a way to do it. I mean, that's just and we just need to make it as hard as possible for them to do it. So that's part of that risk triangle, trying to make sure that we're preventing that loss from happening. And we do everything we can. We're working on a new project, which you're going to see coming up as a new contract, a new idea. We're working with a firm that links in with a company called Early Warning. We want to set up ACH payments for vendors and have not been able to do it because we weren't comfortable with how we make sure their bank account data is correct and we don't have fraud coming in from a vendor's perspective. So we're partnering with another company. They will be verifying all bank account information for anyone we make payments to. So trying to find that is something relatively new in the banking world. And we're going to be implementing that over the course of the next year, and we'll be bringing that in. A lot of it has to do with purchasing and not finance, but the minute it touches banking, it does pertain. So we're going to be able to, and one of my favorite things, when Blair is working on a real estate transaction and he's getting ready, we have to wire money to buy land, he sends it to me a week or two in advance so I could verify the bank information. Banks at this point say they're not allowed to share that with us and verify it. So we have a really hard time verifying that the place we're sending money to is where it's supposed to go to. With this service, we'll be able to do that. So again, we're trying to find any possible loophole to verify, to make sure that when we're sending money, it's going to the right place. You know, we have standard procedures in the office that if a new wire comes in, it doesn't come to anybody in my office through an email or a phone call. It's me personally talking with them. You know, that whole imposter fraud, all those things that go on. We're very cognizant of that and very cautious. And knock on wood, we've been able to avoid any of those issues. But we work very closely with the IG's office whenever we see anything, or if we're working on something that doesn't feel quite right, I pick up the phone and we work very closely. We saw a lot of check fraud at the beginning of the pandemic, and I reached out and we had a call with school police and the IG's office, and now we share the data we see. When there's positive pay exceptions, you know, we stop it in our office, so the bad checks don't get paid, but it's helpful for them to know what's happening. So now we share that data with them every day, so they can see it, and it may pertain to some other investigation they're doing that we don't know about. So that sharing of data is really important. So I look at it as a partnership, just trying to make sure we reduce risk across the district.
Most
Teresa,
definitely.
excuse me, go ahead.
And we do internal funds audits of all the schools, and if we're looking at something and there's something that's just not right, that's why it's great to have the investigation side as well. We then take it, and our investigators will look at it, and if it looks like so it's criminal, we have our own police department, which, you know, not too many IG's offices have that ability. We would have put on the back burner if it was an outside agency. They wouldn't care about the fact that we lost $12,000 by a bookkeeper when they're dealing with rapes and murders. So having our own internal police department where we can work together and we're able to look at things proactively, which is what I want to do. I want to make sure that we point out the landmines, not just report on the dead bodies afterwards. Because once that money's spent and once we've lost the confidence of the public, it's gone. Restitution doesn't cover everything. So that's why us working together is so important.
My question for you, Teresa, is on cybersecurity, whether you have a special aspect of that, a special focus for that.
Yes, we have a CISA in our office who's a cybersecurity, that's her computer information specialist auditor. And that is something that is being pushed forward in the legislature as far as doing audits and cybersecurity. And it's, you know, it's not when you're going to, you know, if you're going to be hit by an intruder, it's when, and if it's going to be successful. So that is something that we're always keeping on our radar. And if there's an ability, and we work with IT, and that's another area, I will speaking to IT and see if there's anything that we can do in that area as well.
I think a lot of it's training, though. Is it proactive with your individual employees?
Yes, I am working on, one of the things that we didn't have is a really strong outreach program. A lot of people don't understand what the IG's office does. That it's kind of a mystery, and it really isn't that complicated. And if we demystify what we do and we're not seen as just the bad guys, then we can train people, and I can adjust our training for the fraud triangle. We can address it to cybersecurity. We can do it because every internal control is only as good as the person implementing it. And there's a lot of times people just don't understand that you have two people in a room to look at open mail, and one person's on this side staring at the wall, and on this side, they don't realize they need to be looking at each other. That's the reason why you have two people. And it's just simple training, as you said. And we are going to be ramping that up and doing a lot more.
Thank you.
All right.
Are we there?
There, I just point out, once again, thank you all for coming. Our next meeting is scheduled for August 5th. So we'll have our quarterly investment reports. Hopefully, we're going to have the capital plan ready for you to see with the future debt service schedules. That will definitely be ready for you. And then whatever else we think of to bring to you by then.
Any other comments? Nothing more with that's adjourned. I guess who's getting, hopefully your staff is getting the leftover strawberry shortcake.
I'll take it upstairs and they'll all have snacks. And some of them are probably online and they're waiting for it to be delivered. So yeah, they'll get the leftovers.
Thank you for all of that. Appreciate it. And for all the good work.
Okay, thank you. And thanks to all the people online. We really do appreciate it. And hopefully at the August meeting, we can have everybody back in the building. And I think at that point, we may have mask optional. I'm not sure. I'm waiting for that ruling to come out, but I'm thinking it's mask optional for schools, so I'm guessing it will be for our building as well. I'll let you know, though. Thank you very much.
Thank you.